So we'll go ahead and do that, and it always works better as a discussion than as a lecture, so we'll do that too. We have John Henry, and we have Kelly Miller, and I'm going to be the tiebreaker. They're going to evaluate the sheep.
And you guys are getting paper copies of the breed standard. This is a much more exacting breed standard than the Devon, so I thought it was kind of interesting to look at how much detail there is on this and not as much on the Devon.
Yeah, and part of that is because it was a recently imported breed that had been here historically. It was internationally rare, and basically the impetus for importing the breed was conservation. If you read through this is what we're going to. It's partially prescriptive and partially descriptive as a breed standard, and then you'll also notice that there's comments. And for most breed standards, there's going to be a reason for what they say. So, for example, when they're talking this morning about the alertness and a little bit nervousness, frankly, of the Devons, that was because they made better oxen. And a lot of these living history farms, if you go through and they say, yes, historically they used red Devon oxen, they have a yoke of shorthorn oxen, and that's the reason, because Devons don't stand still very well, and in a living history farm, that's really not what you need. You need something that's going to keep shaking his head yes up and down. So, and that's because you probably use the shorthorn instead of Devon oxen for that reason. Do you still have your line back up there? Okay, well, you need to get another pair. Do you have a longhorn yoke? Okay, well, that'll do. Okay, at some point we're going to card grade sheep, but we need the sheep to card grade. This is a sheep. And then usually what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we're gonna evaluate the teeth, the front teeth. We're not gonna evaluate the back teeth because if a sheep ever bites you, you know you've been bit. And so you can watch this sheep walk. We're gonna. The sheep has wool. That's what sheep do, Dr. Houston, and they have hair sheep. So that's the reason for that snide comment. Now, and so we're going to watch the sheep walk. We're going to watch how the sheep's built. We're going to palpate, either scrotum or udder, depending on, which is ever appropriate. And then we'll be evaluating different parts of it that we can only evaluate by palpation because you can't see. And then I will explain what we're doing. Actually, while they're doing it, it's probably going to work best for me to talk and them to do it. So guess what she's doing? Kelly is playing with this ram. And you need to do that because obviously that's the business end of a ram. Then she's going to evaluate the teeth, and what we want those teeth to basically barely meet that front dental pad. Now the New Zealanders and the Australians get really wigged out about this, probably more than I do. But what's going to happen is on a lot of these Leicesters, the teeth are actually going to protrude a little bit beyond the pad. With age, they clip grass less and less and less effectively. And so that gets to be a problem. They're going to part the wool. Well, this is a long wool breed, and those of you over here, we'll try to get y'all to where you can see too. What they're doing is they're parting that wool, looking at the staple length. This is a half a year's growth, roughly. And she's going to try to make it like it's a show sheep in Australia. This takes a while. So what we're after is, in this breed, it's a Leicester Longwool, so we want them to be lustrous, and it should be long, and it should have this defined lock structure. The cross fibering that's going to hold those locks together is actually a genetically conditioned, so they want as little of that as possible. And then they already did run their hands and open up the britch. And what you want an even grade of wool from the shoulder back to the britch, if you can do it with as little hairiness in the britch, which is where it's going to show up, if it's going to show up. So you want that. She's going to palpate over the withers. You want those, just like on the cattle, you want the shoulders to be you want the top of the withers to be the backbone, not the shoulder blades, because that sheep is going to hold up better. You can do that by palpation. Now, and then she's going to run her hand over the loin to see that rear end of that loin is broad and well fleshed. I also like to look at feet. They need their feet trimmed, Elaine.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not doing it.
They all need to.
No, but With especially with sheep and goats, they actually should be fairly erect on their upright on their pasterns, and that's going to actually translate when you look at that. When you look at him walk, these should be like little square tables on 4 legs. He is very, very square, and then as he walks, you can see that he's actually walking sound and true. So, structurally, quite good. I haven't had a chance to look at him.
Pooping beautifully.
And he's pooping beautifully.
You want to come look?
Pardon? Oh, he was last year's lamb.
He's last year's lamb. It's a relatively slow-growing breed.
You spring lamb, so are you April, May type?
Okay.
As opposed to January, February?
Yeah.
So when do they reach mature height size?
In about 2.5 to 3 years.
2.5 to 3 years. Yeah, and so they'll be much larger then. And then you want the males to look masculine, the females to look feminine. The breed standard requires dark pigment in the skin, so that you want kind of blue ears where the white hair covers the blue skin. And a lot of people actually get kind of wigged out about that. They say, well, he's got really, really light pigment, I can't use him. And you cut those little pieces off before you eat the sheep, and you don't shear the ears. So the point being that you have to put all of these things into a correct context. Yes, they're important for breed character. Yes, it would be a defect. Should it disqualify an animal from breeding? Certainly, I'd be more concerned about the pasterns and the wool quality and the overall size of the animal than I would the ears, but you don't want to ignore any one piece of it. You probably don't want to be breeding really, really light pigmented animals together. And there you have it.
You want to look at him?
Only if I have to break a tie. I'm the third judge. I'm just here as a tiebreaker. That way I don't have to make decisions.
All right. So,
Is there any tail dock?
Is there any, yes, they do dock tails.
fleece is okay.
Yes.
I don't
is
have
there
a problem
length?
with these
No,
ears.
we don't. We don't
He's
get
pretty
into that
good in
deal
the
too much.
back.
I would have
I
docked
don't
him longer than they
We
did.
typically try to dock.
Yeah.
Okay. And that actually gets to be an issue because especially with these long wools, if you for a technically legal dock in the United Kingdom,
That foot turn.
you're still going to end
Yeah.
up with quite a messy rear end. So I would actually dock it a little bit
Foot
shorter than that.
being feet.
But it
That's
certainly
what
would
I'm
not be
thinking
as
it
short
is.
as a commercial show dock or something like that.
So, you don't have the points on here, like we saw with the depth.
We don't have the points on there. No, because it's not a point. Right. All we're trying to do is figure out if it meets breed standard
16,
perfectly, then it's a
12.
blue card. If
16,
there's
12.
deviations from that, it's a red card, regardless of the deviation. And that actually gets to be an important point because when we put important issue when we put
That's
points
the
on
only thing that
things,
bothers me,
then everybody
just a little
tends
bit.
to look at the point
Dips a
value,
little
you
bit.
judge the overall score, and then you put all that total. But even if you put different things with different points, there's going to be certain faults that should basically just veto everything
So
else, even if it had relatively few points. So basically, if you just had one testis, you would want to. That's a veto. If you had, if you didn't have teeth, that would be a veto. And when you evaluate animals for inclusion in landrace breeds like the Barbados black belly, you can have certain
And I don't think
characteristics where it may be relatively trivial, but it's going to actually X out
For me.
the animal from consideration. We were once evaluating horses for inclusion in the Spanish horse conservation group.
I would
The only defect in the population was the muzzles,
I would like
and yet they were all really, really consistent, and that was actually consistent with a history of crossbreeding, and they were all rejected. Other than that, they were perfect, but you really had to pay attention. So there are things that can veto, this kind of sort of thing. And let's see what the judges say.
Well, come here.
You tiebreaker, you.
Does he feel weak right there? to you?
That's what worries me.
Okay. So the issue is he weak over the withers? And to me, the top point of the withers is his backbone. He could be you can still feel the tops of his shoulders, so he's a little bit weak. Elaine knows me, and that's why she selected this ram. Because all you Longwool breeders are going to say, but isn't his fleece too strong? And this fleece is
No.
wonderful.
It-
Strong means coarse, but we don't
You
say
can let
coarse
go of
because it
him.
sounds rude.
Right.
Well, no, and there's supposed to be long, strong wool. I don't know. I'd take him home.
I would
That's
too.
what I would use him on my
Yeah.
flock.
No, so the issue is, how.
What's your card and why?
Yeah, that's the question.
That's our question.
So,
I would blow him.
I would blue him.
well, I'm a tiebreaker, so I guess I'd have to blue him. No, but
Our question was blue to red because
right,
of
blue to
that.
red because of that.
Yeah.
But the way he stands, the way he walks, the way he's built, the way his fleece is very, very consistent.
Yep. Very
you
breed
could,
standard.
You could whine about the pigment.
Yes, yes.
You could whine about, and I think his withers are strong. I mean, I don't think that it really shows much evidence of weakness, nor do I see much weakness. So, yeah, blue's fine.
Okay.
Questions on that? This is kind of how we do it. So it's,
Say more about the pigment. What was it about the pigment?
The pigment,
he could be bluer.
ears.
Yeah.
His face looks white instead of blue.
if,
And
See the
are we going to
ins-
have a good blue one?
if you look at him, it's
that's gonna be
if
relatively
you look at his
frequent
ears.
within the
See,
breed.
there, it's
More
pink. It should be blue.
It should be darker.
And if you really look at his nose, it's mottled. It's pink with black speckles all over, where it should be like coal black.
Solid black. Oh,
Solid black. You should actually see blue skin, some blue skin through the white hairs on his face. And we are, Joan and I are very, very critical, especially on rams. And that's why we were having the conversation about right here, because we are very critical.
This is your flock. Your ram is your flock, and you can let things go on ewes or overlook things on ewes, but be very critical about a ram because that's what makes your flock.
And he's masculine enough.
Yes, for
but
a
I
yearling-
want to see what he looks
Yeah.
like in a year or two.
Yeah, he's
He
going
should
to
be
probably
He's not finished.
He'll be very masculine.
Yeah.
I think, since he's this masculine at this
at
Right.
this age.
Right.
And you probably think maybe his passions are a little weak. We talked about that, but we think it's because his feet need trimmed.
And he moves strong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he moves
And
great.
they don't all do that.
No.
Okay, so.
Okay.
When you were separating the fleece, it looked like there was a lot of pink skin showing.
Yes.
Is that because of
That
lack
he's
of...
very healthy.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
What I was trying to say is the density of the wool follicles. I mean, is
Right.
the density of the fleece less, and that's why I'm seeing more pink, or no?
part of that, did everybody hear the question? So basically, when we part the wool, you can see the skin and it's pink. They're long wools, and so their fleece is their follicular density is going to be less than on a fine wool or a medium wool sheep. I did not. When I grab his fleece, a handful stays a handful, so it's dense. And there will be some of these that do not have a dense fleece. A year's growth. What's y'all's experience? Because a year's growth should be about 12 to 15 pounds,
At
especially on a
least.
ram,
Yeah.
at least.
On
And
rams.
some of them, if you shear them when they're 18 months old, they may be up to 40 pounds that first shearing. That's extreme, but that's what you want. I mean, they are supposed to be little wool-producing machines.
And what I was trying to show when I was separating the wool like that is you can see you want this to be even lock structures from front to back. And if you take a line and separate it out like I was doing, see how the locks hang? The little things, you want that to be as even as possible front to back.
And was he shorn as a lamb?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do shear him as lambs, so this is,
And when they show them in Australia, they do that. They'll put a stick in there
Yeah, they'll run a
and
stick through
slide
here
the-
and
when
slide
they
it
flip
out.
the stick up, it's like the lights go on. It's really, really cool how beautiful and shiny that fleece is.
And as Phil says, when you shear them, once they're sheared, you want to be able to look out there and see a light bulb glowing. And a lot
yeah.
of them do.
And it is. It's fun. It's fun to shear them and then watch them for the first few days because they do glow in the
Yeah,
pasture because of
they
that
do.
luster.
See the lock structure, how it hangs and even locks all the way across it. That's what we're looking for. And sometimes when you get back here, it'll totally change. So this is a good. This is
Nice.
great. This is very, very breed standard fleece
Yeah.
for these.
And the
sheep.
luster comes from a really, really flat scale structure. And so even though there's strong wool, the handle on the wool is actually much slicker. We won't necessarily say soft because Marie's here. But
You can say soft.
no, but I mean, wool is really fascinating, and that's one reason. So that it's a relatively strong wool, but it's relatively smooth handling because of that low scale structure, which also provides you with that luster. So it's a peculiar fiber.
Okay, ready?
He's also got good length. I think we should mention
Yeah, he
that.
does.
And again, as we mentioned this morning, an inch longer is an inch more weight, an inch taller is just more light underneath him.
Is this a yearling?
Yeah, these are both the same.
Okay.
Just shut the gate. I got it.
You're going to be shocked when you see this, if this is the one we saw yesterday. It's a lot nicer in there than what it looks on the outside. It's a lot fine. Look, doesn't it look different?
So when we do this, we have a little piece of paper that everybody who
It's
card
shocking, isn't
grade-
it?
who gets an animal card graded gets that has what the judges had to say. So that's part of what Britt is doing, and that's what she's done on a number of these card grading.
got
To
a
be
good
perfectly
mouth.
honest, and you tell me if this
He's
is
a
not
yearling.
true, I think Britt probably learns more than almost anybody else
Oh,
at the
me
thing.
too.
Because she's really paying
don't like
attention
this
and
one.
she hears
Now he's got a little
everything
bit
they're
more
saying.
pigment.
So if you do card grading,
There's
becoming a
spurs.
scribe is a
There's spurs.
great way to learn.
All right,
Watch
you want
him
me to turn him
walk.
loose?
Yeah. I want, if this is the one, I want to watch him walk.
Now watch him walk, because the other one knew where his feet were. This guy is not really too sure where his feet are.
He throws one of his right leg out when he walks. It's going to be hard to see.
Now, a lot of these Leicesters are real broad in the back, and you can actually get them too broad and too square, and then they just can't get under themselves.
He's real narrow. Yes. Yes.
So,
See how narrow?
Yeah,
he's
he's
very
real-
narrow. He's very narrow. And he throws that right leg.
yeah, to some extent, but as with anything, if you get too extreme, you go outside of functionality.
He's a little narrow in the back.
He's very narrow in the back.
Well, and he's actually not well muscled.
No,
So what do y'all want to do?
I wouldn't use him.
Yeah, but that's unfair.
No, I'm not going to weight him.
No, but I mean,
I would. Ay. His fleece is okay.
Yeah, what do we like about them?
I love it. I like his fleece. You look at his fleece and you think it's really strong, but when you part it, it's not.
It's
okay, translate. Can anybody hear if I don't do this? I mean, I don't know. Does it help?
Yes, it helps.
Pardon? It does help. His fleece is actually very, very uniform, and it looks like it's going to go strong in the britch, but it doesn't.
Doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very, very uniform. He's actually even less britchy than the
Yeah.
other one, who
Don't you
was
hit
perfectly
me.
acceptable.
Don't you?
That is a character flaw,
Yes.
because these suckers can kill you.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, everybody thinks it's trivial, but it's not. I do like I think his pasterns are really, really
Yes.
strong.
Yes.
And actually, overall, he's not built too poorly. He's a little bit weak through the shoulders, and he's not very well fleshed. And of course, that's going to matter because His pigment is
It's
fairly
better
weak.
than better than the first one, I think.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's weak.
It's weak, but
weak.
it's not. So we're debating on what to do. They're not going to take him home, but they're pretty picky.
We are. I said we're very
well,
picky.
they also, I mean, and they have a lot of sheep at home, so
Yeah.
that, I mean that's fair.
What, the low
So
end
in
of a
this
red?
situation,
a low red.
A low red.
yeah, well, okay, so he's at the border between red and
Yeah.
yellow, which doesn't help anybody.
No.
And you could. The problem with this ram is that he's got some strong points, but he's got several weak points. Okay, so if he were to be used, he needs to be used cautiously, and he needs to be used on superior ewes.
Right.
Okay, and so looking at it, say, from the fleece perspective, knowing that his fleece is really good, if you had a ewe that was fabulous other than her fleece, like she didn't have a perfect fleece,
Right.
would he be good for somebody like that?
Yes, he would. I mean, and he's not incredibly bad anywhere.
No,
Right.
that's
It's just that where he's strong, he's extremely strong, and then where he's not, he's sort of average.
Right.
And
you
so
like the length and
you
width
wouldn't.
of him here, but
Pardon?
you don't like. So you like the length and width of him here. You don't like the muscling in his legs.
Well, I just feel over the top. He's fairly weakly muscled everywhere, and that that matters. I mean,
But he's also a yearling. so-
right, but he's less of an animal than the other
Than
one
the
was.
other one.
Right.
Yeah.
But
All right,
one
let's
thing
go,
that
Walter, on
did
that.
stick out to me was that he made a few little advances, like he was gonna charge Kelly or
Yes.
something. It's in the breed standard that this is a docile
Docile,
breed.
right.
So if a ram at that
Yeah,
age,
he's gonna get nasty.
at that age, if it's already doing that, I wouldn't keep it.
Right now, and temperament. I was amazed to learn this year that temperament is strongly heritable, and it's among among one of the most heritable traits that there is. I'm temperamentally like my paternal grandfather, who was the nicest man on the planet. Phenotypically, I'm like my paternal great-grandfather, who was the meanest man that ever lived. But this is important, and the temperament, especially in the behavior, is you have a genetic predisposition, and of course for dog breeders this is even more important because it's about 50-50, what the dog brings to the table and what you do with it. With these, if they're awfully cute when they're little and they love to butt heads, and so you can kind of play with them. Well, you don't do that because they grow up and then they still want to butt heads, and then you don't want to play anymore. And so you don't know, especially in a situation like this where they're exposed to the public to some degree, you're just not sure. So you need to, I'm not giving them a free pass on that, but you have to evaluate that. So if it's your farm, you know how they've been handled. It's a little bit of a different issue. Questions, discussion, disagreement?
If his
Joe, do you
behavior,
want me to hold it?
Okay.
if his behavior was better, would you, maybe not breed him, but keep him around because his wool was so good and just shear him every year?
Okay, could you save him as a wether for fleece production? Yes. In fact, oh Lord, yes, I believe was the quote.
yes. Actually, no. If you would take that ram and weather him, he would put every single bit of energy into his wool. That's all he's got to put energy into. And it would be, if you wanted to enter a fleece in a show, do it from a weather. It would be spectacular.
Yeah, he does have spectacular wool. And we're looking
See
at
how
a ewe
fine
here,
it is
or not,
inside?
This is a two-year-old.
2-year-old ewe. Okay, and then you guys are gonna have to stay to the side so that,
She narrows out a little bit. See how she goes like this to this?
and their little tootsies are iron. And so if you don't like to if you don't like to trim sheep feet, this is not the breed for you, especially if you live on a soft ground.
Okay, and
Let her
more,
walk. Let her walk.
So
okay.
they are less prone to foot issues because their feet are so hard?
Yes, they're less prone to foot issues because their feet are so hard, but if you look at her back feet especially, they're a little bit overgrown, and that's going to affect the way she moves.
And they're a little on the white side though.
And
Yeah.
her feet are whiter than they should be. They should be very dark.
Is pigment a common problem?
Cut pigment is a common problem.
And the New Zealanders will tell you the white feet came from the Australians, and the Australians will tell you the white feet came from the New Zealanders. So,
Well, they're neighbors.
I would take her home.
Hi.
Okay, so she's got a place to go. See, you can feel the shoulders and you can feel the, hi, sweetheart. She's got great teeth.
It's another, like, the last one. See, she's got a good mouth.
So you want the teeth just to be
See?
right at
See
the
how
edge
they,
of the hard
yeah.
palate.
See, how good they match. She's like, quick, I don't want everybody to look at me.
Oh, I see.
See how good? She's got a really good mouth.
yeah, she's in with the Rams.
2.5. Okay, she's 2.5. And what do y'all think?
I'd give her a red.
Why?
Because she's narrow in the back, she's pinched at the back, she's got white feet, she doesn't have good pigment. So that's why I would.
Joan likes her better than Kelly does. Phil's gonna break the tie. So is it blue to red?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm red.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm a low blue. I think she's got faults, yes, but I think there's more better things about her than there is bad.
So you're gonna go blue?
Low blue.
Okay, I'm gonna go red. The reason I'm gonna go red is she's never lambed.
Has she been bred or attempted breeding or? Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, I agree with you, you know, but I think that we can add the functional component to it and move her down a notch. Because they really do have a job to do. One thing this ewe does have that's quite nice is her length, and not all of them are quite this long.
Is she two as in, what, so do you?
She's 2.5.
She's 2.5.
She
So
didn't lamb as a 2-year-old.
Okay, so she did lamb as a 2-year-old,
She
but she
didn't.
did not.
No, she did not.
Okay.
Very, very few of them are going to lamb as yearlings.
Okay,
As
Right.
he said, she should have lambed by now. So that's a strike against her,
right, and
kind
that's,
of.
so their first exposure as a ewe is during their yearling year?
Yes.
Yes.
Probably
Not at the
here.
A year and a half.
Here,
Right.
here.
Now, very rarely you'll get one that grows well enough to lamb as a yearling. Do y'all get those?
I do.
Yeah.
Almost all of mine.
And this breeds function different in different environments, and we're evaluating all of Williamsburg sheep. Not all of them, but you know, all the sheep we're evaluating are from Williamsburg. When we do the card grading at Maryland Sheep and Wool, sheep come in from all over.
Everywhere.
And then, you know, you get these Michigan sheep and you go, oh, this is a blue card. Next Michigan sheep. Oh, this is a blue
Right.
card. Next Michigan sheep. Oh, this is a blue card. This is not trivial.
Right.
And one of the board members, Brian Larson, is a Lincoln breeder who went academically from place to place to place to place, Kentucky, Missouri, and then somewhere else, and then back up to Michigan. He goes, yeah, you know, and I can finally breed really, really good Lincolns again. It's like, click. You know, so the different breeds are really suited to different environments. And this is not the same environment as Leicestershire, England, 200 years ago. And it shows up in the sheep.
Yes.
So yes, you can raise them here, but you know, if we took the same genetic material here, had the same genetic material up in Michigan or Minnesota, you're going to get a different sheep out of that, just because the environment's different.
On the sheep with the pigment, you didn't like the pigment.
But she's a ewe.
Right. I think on her eyes and her face, she's got more of that blue
She does.
showing through. I know she's got a little bit of modeling, and I know it's not perfect, it's not great, but I think it's better. I know we have one.
Yeah.
We have ones
She's
that are better.
she's a ewe. So bred to the right ram.
You'll pull that.
And it's an ear. As Phil
Bred to the
says.
right ram and conceiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, that's her job, you know.
Percentage of first exposures
I'm-
you expect?
She's more solid, but
Do
see
you
how
really,
she
I know,
tapers
obviously you
back
want
in?
100%, but if
She
you
needs-
were on your flock to
Yeah.
have 80%, would you consider that acceptable, unacceptable on a first breed.
The first breed, yeah. I would, yeah. I push mine as ewe lambs. Usually about 75 to 80% of my ewe lambs will lamb as a yearling.
Okay.
But that's just my program.
Yeah. So you're.
But
your
if they
yearling
don't
ones-
lamb as by a 3-year-old, they're living cold.
Yeah.
Are they less likely to breed, since they're an older breed, they
Mature later.
mature later, but I know some breeds are going to breed out of season.
These will not breed out of season.
Yeah, these are strongly seasonal breeders, and if you had a ewe that was capable of breeding and lambing as a yearling, and you held her off, you actually never would catch up to the reproductive potential. So the earliest you can start these, the better it is for the reproductive life of the animal. And that's kind of a subtlety that's missing sometimes.
So he was asking why we look at the eyes.
Why do we look at the eyes? Partly that's to evaluate worm loads. And yeah, mostly it's that.
Whatever.
And
How old is this ewe?
13, so 4.
She's 4.
look at her teeth.
We did. She's got the different fleece. She's a little bit, but she's not down there.
Brian. Yeah, I did say it.
Does she lamb?
She is. How she look from the back now?
She looks britchy, but she's not.
No, man, she's not that. That's not bad.
Powerhouse. Isn't she?
She's a baby maker. She's got a big rib cage. She can get lots of babies in there.
I can turn her loose. Let's watch her walk.
Nice in the back.
Okay, so the only fault the judges have found is pigment. And so, yeah, so Blue, she's finer fleeced and it is uniform. Look at those nice pasterns and how upright she is on those. And that would be a fault in a horse or in a donkey to be really, really upright like that. That is not a fault in a sheep or a goat. That is an indication. But she's not post-legged. You know, if you had that conformation on a horse, they'd be post-legged. So this ewe's going to last. Moves well, not perfectly, but well. You know, you couldn't fault her. And that length. So here's your blue card ewe.
She'd
What are
go
the-
in my flock.
Oh, yeah.
Do you look at the consideration of whether this is a single?
So this is a 2-year-old.
This is a 2-year-old. So
Don't surrender.
that's not fair.
What do you say?
He said she had a head tilt because you were pulling her head. Uh-oh.
Ooh, is that a bad bite?
Not horrid, but bad.
And if you want people sticking
Oh,
hands in her
yes.
mouth to
She sure does.
I mean, if you guys want to feel
She's
the
got
bite.
tan
Oh,
all
I
over,
saw
all
that when
over,
she
all
walked
4
in.
of them.
How old is she? Will they, can that, at this point, it's not going to correct it all? Is that
She's
right?
got that, what looks britchy, but it's not. Again.
It's just gonna get worse.
Is she laying?
Her nose is good.
Yes, she does.
All of them.
What do you want to do? Has she lambed?
Yes. Sorry. Red or yellow.
I don't know.
Yeah. Simply because of the
Well, no, I mean, it's, yeah,
the
mostly.
mouth, the legs.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Okay, we're going yellow.
Can you show?
Okay, this is a very nice sheep.
Yes.
but she has to go yellow. Her incisors protrude noticeably beyond the soft palate, the hard palate, whatever that thing is. Now that sounds trivial, but what that does is if you imagine the top jaw and the bottom jaw, they should align. And when they don't align, basically that's going to shove that bottom jaw out further. That actually upsets the alignment of everything else behind there. Now you could palpate that, but you can only do it once because they're going to bite your fingers off. Then you don't have fingers. And that's not funny, because if once a sheep's bitten you, you know you've been bitten, because those back teeth are really, really sharp. That means this sheep is not going to age well. Now we had a ewe, Glindu was a Leicester ewe, and she lived to be 14. Lambed last as a 12-year-old. Had to put her down because she was getting cast in the field. She was fat. She had 4 teeth in her head. They just happened to meet. And that's a typical Leicester. I mean, it was amazing. So we're gonna mark her down for her mouth, and also she has brown pigment or tan pigment on the lower legs. And this is going to sound really stupid to everybody, but that's a really important fault, because when you start picking that up, you're going to eventually get tan fibers in the wool. And when you have a white sheep, you want your sheep to be white. When you have a colored sheep, you want your sheep to be colored. You don't want a white sheep with a bunch of tan pigment, because you're screwing up the way that's the genetics of that for determination, and you run the risk of contaminating white fleeces. And that it is important to keep white fleeces white.
And that's really
she's
a shame.
long.
She's pretty.
Her
It's a
fleece
shame.
is wonderful. So it's an interesting example of a yellow sheep with a few significant flaws. So what? Blue is superior, red is acceptable, yellow is
Flaws that,
average or
yeah.
acceptable.
Acceptable.
I'm reading it over here.
Yeah.
Yellow is unacceptable. She's not, white's unacceptable. She's not unacceptable. You have to use her quite carefully. I mean, she has strengths. Her physical structure, other than her mouth, is good.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd want to mate her to somebody, you don't want to mate her to somebody that's got
Really?
teeth back. You want to mate her to the one that's just got the right bite. And then you'd want to mate her to somebody with just the
With
absolute
Really
no
exceptional.
blue pigment
Yeah.
without any tan
any
pigment
tan.
on the haired areas of the fleece.
And
So-
this is exactly why you need to card grade your sheep and learn to pick this stuff up, because the normal person would probably just throw the ram in with all the ewes and have 3 other rams around that he could be using on this ewe to break up the monotony of the faults. Understand? That's why it's very, very important for you to learn all these things about your sheep so that you can correct them each generation that you do breed them. She would be one of these sheep that it's like, oh man, if I just had the right ewe, she's beautiful, or the right ram to correct the problems that she has.
Right.
Is the mouth heritable, or is it simply developmental?
Is the mouth heritable?
We have talked about that issue.
Before, yeah.
This one's probably got at least some heritable component. Yeah.
I had a whole
Rye faces, not so much, but this one I'd worry about. And now part of the paranoia is inherited from New Zealand and Australia, and they would have flipped out over this.
Oh yeah,
We didn't flip.
because there's still potential there.
And this
Right.
breed, the lambs quite often only have brown fibers on their legs, but they go away.
Yeah, but
Obviously, they didn't on
they
her.
didn't on her.
Yeah.
And it's better when they don't have them. Now we will accept black spots on the lower legs and on the face, but that's different. This tan is actually a quite different genetic mechanism, and we don't have time for that lecture. Okay, she doesn't like her yellow status.
Can you point out exactly what you're talking about on the legs? Is it feet?
Yeah, and see, it looks like she's run through mud.
Yes.
That's not mud. That's
Ankles down.
yeah, from the ankles down. That's actually
Yes.
pigment.
Wow. Yes. Okay.
Elaine, one of the questions is, has she lambed before, and what lambs did she produce? Did she throw those on?
She did lamb. I think she did have that, or he had that. I think she had a ram lamb.
Yeah.
I don't think he did. I think he had some other flaws that I don't think we necessarily wanted to use him.
Well, and the other issue there is, okay, so how are we, this is a good question, because how are we going to use this ewe, right? She's got some strengths, she's got some weaknesses. Now, let's pretend she always has twins, okay? We're not going to save a ram out of her, okay? But we're going to save her daughters, and then we're going to get closer to where we want. We're going to save rams out of the ewes that we think are almost perfect. And then we're going to, those are going to be the rams that are going to correct the faults on this one generation to generation. So we are going to, we're going to be critical this generation and the next generation, but every animal has a purpose in a population. And so some of them are actually going to be where it's the excellent ones that you're going to look for, especially your herd sire replacements and things like that. And then the more average ones, it's like, yes, we can improve this generation to generation by saving daughters, and then we don't lose her genetic contribution for the things that she has that are right, but we don't swamp the population with the faults that she has that make her weaker.
And this is one of the things raising a really rare breed that you have to take in consideration. Even though we card graded her as a yellow,
She might be the only one left of a
of
certain
a
certain
line,
line.
and so therefore you're going to have to take much more careful consideration with her breeding so that you can continue that on.
So in that case, would you look at her pedigree, or would you look at the inbreeding coefficient that you have?
I would.
You follow what I'm asking?
I would definitely not breed her to anybody in that line, even though it is, maybe I'm telling it wrong.
No, there's no wrong.
Okay. In my flock, if she was the only one left of her line, I would breed her to someone else, get a daughter. And then if that daughter has a good mouth, then I might take that daughter back to somebody in that line.
Okay.
That's what I would do on my farm. Whether that's the right answer, I don't know.
And the coefficient of inbreeding you need to consider it, but it can drive you to weird places.
Yes.
And I don't know who all's here,
Yes.
so if I'm stepping on your toes, step up,
Yes.
I'll do it again. But it turns out that the inbreeding that occurs in the previous few generations is actually quite important. The inbreeding that might be stacking up many generations back is probably much less important. And there's biological reasons for this, and you just have to trust me. Because, I mean, basic, pardon? Buy your book. I don't think it's in the book. But anyway, the next book. But that becomes important because in a lot of breeds, they use the coefficient of inbreeding to drive all of your decisions, and it can't drive all of your decisions. The one thing you don't want in a breed is to have everything related across the breed, especially quite recently. And so you can actually tolerate fairly high inbreeding coefficients as long as it's not something that's going to be across the entire breed, so that it can go out again the next generation. And the problem with some of the rare breeds is that's no longer a possibility, because everything is going back to this one popular sire or this one remnant herd or something like that. So you do need to pay attention to it, but you can't let it tyrannically sort of direct the entire breeding of the rare breed, because then you're basically
It would drive you
yourself
nuts
into a
if you
box.
did that.
Well,
It would just drive you crazy if
It's a
you.
long drive or a short drive.
Because we only, we only started with 10 of these sheep, so we have right off the bat, we have a very small pool to deal with. So.
And frankly, with some of the founders were quite rare. So the Glendu ewe, for example, we line bred her, and in fact, we bred her back to her son, two different times, simply to produce rams that could go out then and outbreed to other flocks, and that's how we saved her influence. And she was, of course, a blue card ewe.
That's what I said.
Well, there's nothing wrong with line breeding.
No.
You've got to realize you're going to throw a lot of stuff away.
Well, there's nothing wrong with line breeding, but you realize you're going to throw a lot of stuff away, and you want to line breed to strength, not to weakness.
Right.
And you also want to make sure that the whole breed is not going in the same direction. You want options for outcrosses within the breed to any animal that you produce, and that's where the strategy over the entire breed becomes important.
Sorry.
Okay, is that it, Elaine? Elaine. To be careful with that, because it can mislead you. You can be basically, if you're placing those over animals that basically don't have any acquired faults, you actually may be fooling yourself.
And if
If
that
that-
medical, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that medical problem would become an issue down the road, then you'd have to take that in consideration also, correct?
Yeah, if a medical condition becomes an issue down the road. But I mean, it gets.
It's crooked.
Oh.
It's crooked. She's got a crooked mouth. I'm not.
No.
No, those teeth
no.
are broke.
No, the teeth are broken, but look.
Her mouth.
Yeah, I
is
know, her mouth
crooked.
is off.
She's no, and I wasn't holding it like that. See?
No, yeah. Her mouth's off.
Instead of her mouth going like this, it
How old
goes like
Is
this.
she?
Is that because she's teeth floated in back?
Okay, it shouldn't be that bad.
It's a really fine fleece.
So she has a dry bite?
Yeah, and it's back here that's doing it.
Ooh, wow.
Did you feel that? I mean, it's her molars that are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her molars are setting her mouth off.
Her mouth off.
They would like to see her mouth on that camera.
Okay.
We'll show him.
Okay.
That's a shame. She's very britchy.
Camera would like to see her.
She's very britchy. It's beautiful here and here.
Coarse, rough.
Usually back rich. Now, is that yolk? Is that
That's yolk.
the
But
real
look,
yellowy?
yeah. Now look at how straight and plain that is, and look at how nice and crimped and shiny that is. And that's the biggest change we've seen in a fleece today.
The hard thing is when you look at it without separating it, looking at that,
Right.
the rich right there, it looks actually better than one before
Right.
you said was better.
Yeah.
But
Come on.
You gotta get your hands on it.
Let me hold her. Let me get around the other side. Hold her mouth open.
You can look and you can see even with her mouth closed.
See how this is over this way and this is over that way?
Hanging down even more on one side.
Can you see it?
Okay, I got it.
They got it? Okay.
Show these guys.
Okay. See her mouth? See how off it is?
Oh wow.
It's like this. That's a Leicester. They never quit eating.
So where are we going?
Wow.
Yellow with that mouth.
Yeah.
But it's obvious the mouth isn't hurting her grocery bill.
Make her walk, please. Make her walk. So she's lame too.
And she's got a sore foot.
Well, she has a sore foot. She had a stick stuck in it.
This is part of the reason why I was asking that question, because I saw her in there and I'm anxious to see how that influences or doesn't influence.
I'm
and part of this is
personally
if you're doing
ignoring
I
it.
mean, we're doing this today one time. We got to take everything into account. You're doing it on your farm. It's like, well, okay, she has a stick. But then in 2 months, if she's still
Is she
lame, it's
still-
like, maybe the stick got stuck there because she was lame. You know, I mean, and that sort of thing happens. Okay.
Okay, what do we like first, and then what do we don't like?
She's got big body.
yeah.
She's a baby maker.
She's not quite the baby maker the other
The other one was
No, not nearly as
no.
much, but she could easily hold twins. Oh, I never checked her udder either.
I personally like her fleece, but she's very britchy.
You know, and she's got a strong head, but it's a feminine head.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you get down here and feel this?
What am I doing?
Her udder right there.
No, they're palpating her udder. You just, I mean, you basically don't want any hard knots or evidence of past mastitis. You know, or in the males, you don't want any evidence of epididymal problems or things like that.
Do you care in sheep about extra teeth?
Do you care in sheep about extra teats?
There are a
No.
lot of extra
Because if we fussed about extra teats in these, we wouldn't have a breed.
But we cut them off as soon as the lamb is born, and you can tell which are going to be the real teats and which aren't. And if you cut them off within 3 days, you might get a spot of blood, and that's it. It's very easy, it's not traumatic, and it makes them much nicer throughout.
And the bad thing about those things is they're usually up higher. The little lambs grab hold of those and they'll suck and suck and suck and not get any milk. When the real udder is down, or real teat is much lower and they can't get down that easily.
So you
then
have a
if
starved lamb
you have
and
a starved lamb
mastitis.
and mastitis in the ewe.
Where are you going?
Oh.
I'm still at yellow.
Okay, but what do you like on it? So it's wide sprung ribs.
Yeah.
She's square in the back.
I like her head.
She's got okay pigment. Her feet are good. Well, they're a little bit spotted.
Mm-hmm. My issue is her mouth. My issue personally is her mouth.
But is that inherited or is that an accident?
I'm having trouble making it an accident.
Okay, well then go yellow.
Okay, 2 yellows. I would have gone white. Partly because of the mouth and partly because of the bridge.
Okay.
Which is whatever we do, it's an example of an animal. Even if she hadn't been bridgy, she would not have been above a yellow. So one significant flaw. And I'd watch her lamb like a hawk.
Yeah.
Because it's her structural problems. Now and it's just her head structure because her leg structure is not bad. But I'd use her with great caution.
Okay.
So it sounds like, though, even if it's considered a flaw, you're putting a lot of weight, or from the discussion, a lot of weight was put on, well, there's this flaw, it would not come out, but is it caused by something that's heritable or something that's environmental? So even though on the paper it may say it's a flaw, you may not apply as much weight.
Yeah, I mean, and there is some subjectivity to it. So, as far as weighting the flaws, and and I'm probably harsher on them structurally than otherwise. But then I'm a spinner. And if they're britchy like that, it's like, who wants that?
But if she was 13 and had a mouth like that and produced lambs every year, you'd be saying it's a problem for her.
Yeah, I don't. If she had been, I doubt that you're going to find a 13-year-old ewe with a mouth like that. She would have gone before then.
One of the original lines that we brought in, I had several of the offspring, and that was a genetic fault in that line. And the minute those sheep started hitting 4 and 5 years old, their body condition started going downhill because they didn't have the capacity to eat as well as what they normally did. So it feels very critical when it comes to mouth issues, and I don't blame him because that's what happens.
And my own goat herd, I have goats. I have had goats that have basically starved to death with bad teeth at 3 and 4 years old. And it's like, how could you do that? But it does happen. And I mean, they seriously starve to death because they're missing one molar or something like that.
Which is kind of an argument for
Perfect.
Her face is a little on the strong side.
You can't really tell now. She just doesn't have any. She's as solid as a rock. Just look at this. Look at this.
Huh?
Look at this.
Huh?
Look at this. Just look.
Okay. Because that would have been a very common problem in some South African lines. But her point being that when do you do this? And I mean, you do it constantly. I mean, because even when they're young, you want to save your best ones and eat your worst ones, and you want to keep going from there.
Okay, yesterday when we were talking, I believe it was Friday night at dinner, and Elaine was talking about the youth conservation program where we award a ewe. This is one of the ewes that got awarded to a little youngster that had submitted an essay. She came from my farm. She's a twin.
One.
No, she'll be 2.
So she's 1.5.
Yeah. Now see how dark her ears are? That's what we mean when you say you want dark pigment. That's what we want.
And then look at her feet.
And
too.
then see her
You
feet.
See that white hair, black hooves.
Right.
I'm sorry, dark around the eyes.
Dark around the eyes.
And you can actually see the structure quite plainly on the shorn sheep. But look at the length. Look at how that shoulders tie in.
She stands up proud.
She's dark too short.
The chops are.
She didn't hear you.
Oh, yeah.
Show
Come here, Kel. Show them the chops. How big her loin is.
and
Look at
how
this.
you're finding that.
Look,
From a meat standpoint, that's very desirable.
this is her look how wide her loin is.
So you're going at the end of the rib cage?
Yeah, here's the end of the rib. And here's look how long. She's that long.
So you're measuring the length of it
Yeah.
as well as
She's that long. And then look how wide she is.
And then were you also saying how thick it was?
And then she's thick.
Yeah,
I mean,
instead of the eye of your...
she's
of
that
your-
thick.
Yeah. Instead of the eye of your lamb chop being this big, it'll probably be like that.
Okay.
And that's the best part. Now.
And there's her leg.
And and she's, I mean, you know, Bakewell not only was a wool sheep, this is a meat sheep. Yeah. So, you know, we get caught up in this. So many people get caught up in this breed and they forget that this is also a meat animal. So you want this mass. You know, you got to remember that meat factor about this
Turn her
breed.
waist, let her walk. She's wide and she moves well.
Sorry. Yeah.
Now evaluating her fleece is going to be kind of hard.
Yeah, she's hard
She
to.
doesn't have one.
She's got a Glendew fleece.
Oh, she's got a Glendew fleece. She's blue card.
Well, and you can. I
They're
mean, look
making
at
fun of
her.
me 'cause Glendew is the strongest fleece of the founders.
Look at her face. You know, her face is just perfect. It's so blue with that
Blue,
white
that
hair
pigment,
over it.
yeah.
I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah, she does have good.
Yeah. The only, I mean, my only fault, and it is so minor, she's got little dark spots on her ears.
But that doesn't matter.
But I don't care.
Well, no,
no,
wait,
it doesn't
wait.
matter. I know.
That may be personal preference, but that is not against breed standard.
I know
and
that.
And for card grading, you ignore that.
Yeah, but
So-
that's the only thing I can fault her for. But it's, you know,
It's
that's not
minor.
a fault, but that's
Well,
a person.
and the more heavily pigmented they are, the more likely they are to pick that up. How are her teeth?
Oh,
Good.
fine.
Okay. So, I'd go blue.
So would I.
Yeah, 'cause-
See, even her tongue is black. Did you see that?
Yeah,
And especially when you're giving them to the
she's
cage,
going
She's
to
going to
get
be.
bred.
it's important to give them a good, solid start.
Your tongue?
Does she have colored breeding behind her?
Yes, I believe if this is the one I think it is, I think her mom.
Because there is some
black.
tendency for the bluest ones to carry color. And that's true in all the long wool breeds. And then I guess I never asked, but has Colonial Williamsburg still never produced a colored lamb?
Never had a color.
And some of that may actually account for the pigment. In the Wensleydale breed and the 20s and 30s, when they were selecting very, very heavily for a very, very blue face, nearly all of them are carriers of color, and they're probably 20% of the lambs that come black. So, but I mean, we accept colored sheep, so that's no big deal in this, except Williamsburg likes white sheep. But
I could never.
no,
get
she
rid
doesn't.
Of a black
Right.
sheep. I could never get rid of a black sheep. Where's that black lamb? Where's that black lamb? Where's that black lamb?
It's why she won't let me bring one
Well, and
to
also
her.
in the 18th century, they did not want colored sheep. They would have culled them.
And still
And
to this day.
that gets back to the use of breeds and what it is, because if you're putting wool through mainstream commercial streams, one colored fleece can contaminate an entire 10,000, 20,000 pound lot of wool, and that's why a lot of this breed was used for crossbreeding with fine wool sheep to create ewes that would go on the western ranges, still flock well, still shear heavy, fleeces of acceptable grade. It all had to be white wool. The use of this breed has changed. Basically they're not going to be used anymore for crossbred ewe production on western ranges, and so just accept that fact, and accept the fact that it's going to be, for a lot of the wool is going to go for hobbyist handicraft. The colored wool brings a premium, but it's still going to be. you know, and especially in Australia and New Zealand, historically, the insistence on the white is going to come through, and they were very, very reluctant to accept colored sheep. Well, there's a historic reason for that, and a very strong commercial, economic reason for that.
And still to this day, there's Tasmanian and Australian breeders that won't even tell you if they've had a colored lamb born on their farm.
One of the colored Leicester breeders in the South Island of New Zealand is Elspeth Wilkinson, from whom we got the original semen. And she would talk to all the old-time breeders, old-time breeders, and they would say, okay, but you have to come get the lamb, you know, within 24 hours when it's born, in the dark. Okay, so that, well, because they couldn't afford to have the other breeders come and see that they had a black lamb. So she was at the big Christchurch show, and South Canterbury show, and she was walking down the line, and so there were all these old breeders lined up, and they goes, oh, hi, Elspeth. Oh, hi, Elspeth. Oh, hi, Elspeth. They finally looked down the line and realized, oh.
That's hilarious.
They've been lying to each other for years. Are there any more questions? I think, is that the last sheep? Well.
Phil, if you want to get into card grading, and you know we have a breed, there's not a lot of breeders close by. Is there any advantage of inviting folks with other breeds of sheep to, you know, work through the standard and just go through a group of lambs?
Yeah, I mean, you can get other sheep breeders. I mean, the thing is, I mean, have a standard and then realize that that's the evaluation as according to the standard, you know, or if you want to do it and you don't want to do it according to the breed standard, you want to do it for your own flock, your own goals, you know, your own production goals, whatever you're looking for. And again, you know, the defect in this whole thing is that it's not a production-based evaluation, right? I mean, we can predict wool production, but we're not predicting reproductive capacity or reproductive production here. And that's a defect. And of course, in your own record keeping, your own selection, that's going to be a more important issue. But yeah, I mean, somebody that's used to looking at sheep, I mean, John from this morning with Dectors, I'd have him come look at goats or sheep. I mean, he could look at anything, you know. I mean, but you don't want some show judge that's going to basically use show ring standards. You want something that's related to functionality and hopefully to congruence to breed standard.
And meat sheep breeds versus wool breeds are looked at entirely differently too.
Well, are supposed to, I mean, and that's a huge problem in the show ring, right? I mean, because even if you were raising commercial meat breed sheep, you would not choose the meat sheep in the show ring to meet that goal because they're not going to be functional in a pasture situation. And so again, you need somebody that's astute enough to realize what your goals are, what your system is, and how to get there. Other questions?
Everybody try card grading. It really, really, really is beneficial.
Well, and it's beneficial for selection, but it's also beneficial for education of breeders.
Yes.
I mean, you know, everybody comes away today, oh, teeth, you know, I mean, stuff like that. Okay, well, thank everybody for your attendance.
Yes, thank you.
This went well.